Hey guys, welcome. I'm Kelly Grizzle. I have been working in the identity business for about 15 years now. Spent the last 10 years at SailPoint writing software for them, and before that I was at Waveset and Sun. I've also worked on some specs, the SCIM 1.1 and 1.2 specifications. I'm an author on both of those. So I've been around identity land for quite a while. In fact, this is my 6th Cloud Identity Summit to be to. So, and I love coming here every year. But enough about me. Let's talk about you guys a little bit. And by the way, I'm going to post these slides online afterwards. So if you just want to look at the slide, if you want to take pictures, great. If you don't want to do that, then I'll post them. I'll tweet the location of those later. So let's talk about you guys a little bit first. You guys have been sitting through countless presentations all week. There have been keynotes. There have been master classes. And yes, there have even been happy hours. And you've almost made it to the end of CIS. Truly the end, the real end of CIS. Welcome to the Identiverse. But after this long week, you guys may be feeling a little bit like this. I know, I've been there before. I've been to conferences. I know what a Thursday afternoon is like. It's pretty brutal. So, to avoid this, my job as your presenter for the next 20 minutes is to keep you engaged. And to do that, I plan on using a trick, and that's a Mad Lib. So, if you guys have never done Mad Libs before, it's kind of like a story where you fill in certain words and then it kind of comes up with something funny. So I'm going to need your help though, right? This is a joint activity. Crowd participation is encouraged. In fact, it is actually required. If it doesn't happen, this is going to totally blow up in my face. So I need you, please come through for me, okay? So, we're going to start off. We'll take occasional breaks to get some words for our Mad Lib throughout. But the first thing I need is an emotion or an emotional feeling. Hung over. Very appropriate. All right, we're going to say hungoverness. I think that'll work better in our Mad Lib. Okay, an adjective now. Overly? That is an adverb, that's correct. If it ends in an LY, it's almost always an adverb. Strong. Strong. Good. And now a plural noun. Computers. Sorry, I've been trying to work out this whole Mad Lib business and my cursor gets lost very easily. Computers. Great. Okay, so what are we talking about today? In standard presentation format, I'm going to give some background, and then we're going to talk about a problem, and then I'm going to give you guys a solution to the problem, and everybody's going to be amazed and walk away happy. That's the plan. So let's dive right into this. You guys got to keep up your end of the bargain, though, okay? So first off, some background. What is IGA? And if you're sitting in this conference, you've probably heard of IGA, or at least kind of know the concepts of IGA. IGA stands for Identity Governance and Administration, and sort of the background behind this is maybe 20 years ago or so, people started to need to automate their IT world, right? If you needed to create a new account or change a password, the IT people were going around furiously doing this on all these separate systems. And so the world of identity management, as it was called back then, was born. And that involved things like being able to do access requests, being able to do account management if you needed to disable someone's account when they got terminated. Password management was a big one. That was a real early push for identity management. Being able to automatically react to life cycle events in the identity, like you get a new employee, you got to create 5 accounts for him for what he does. So that was 20 years ago, and it was great. And in fact, it was so great that people started getting tons of access all over the place, and people realized, hey, we got a problem on our hands. We're handing out access like, free cookies, and nobody knows what's going on with this access. it got dangerous because data breaches started happening. People started using their access inappropriately. And so kind of 5 years after the IDM world came around, governance came into the picture. And this is more about being able to put controls around what access people have. Things like being able to periodically review access that your employees have, adding stronger approval processes, doing policy checking. So making sure if I'm requesting access for Bob, is what I'm asking for now, is it going to conflict with something he already has? Could be a bad thing. Or just scanning and saying, do I detect any policy violations out there? Doing role mining, role management, analytics, auditing, all those sorts of things. So those two worlds came together and they created the IGA landscape as we know it today. That's all for that section. So let's move on to some more words. I need another plural noun, please. Dogs. I heard dogs. I heard something else too, but I didn't understand it, so it's going to be dogs. Okay, an occupation that starts with the letter C. Coroner. All right. What happens at CIS stays at CIS. Okay, and now a place. So this can be a car. Okay. A bar, even better. Okay, great. So let's talk about PAM now. Does anybody here know what PAM is? Does anybody here named PAM? No. No PAMs, but a few people that know what PAM is. PAM is kind of new to me, in fact. I've been getting more involved with it over the past 6 months or so. But it is privileged access management, or sometimes called privileged account management. And essentially, in your environment, you've got a bunch of accounts out there, and some are normal things like I can check my email, and some of them are not normal things like I can delete the production database, right? So you got different types of accounts. The privileged ones are the ones that you can do gnarly stuff with, and PAM software kind of controls the access to those privileged accounts. Kind of an easy analogy to think of is a library. So this is a picture of the Stockholm Public Library that I found. It looked pretty cool. So, but in a library, what do you do, right? You've got a library. It's full of books. You can go check out books, right? Similar thing with PAM. Instead of books being in a library, though, you have these privileged accounts or credentials for these privileged accounts. In a library, to check out something, you need to have a library card. And in the same way, with this PAM software, to access things, you need to have authorization to what you're trying to use. You can't just go in anonymously and say, oh, I need the account to change the corporate website so I can deface this thing or something. So you have to have the authorization. Now, kind of one of the big differences between libraries and, well, there's many differences, but one of the the relevant differences is that in a library, you can get any book that you want to, right? You can go in and you can check out Harry Potter or 50 Shades of Grey or whatever is to your liking. That's not the case in PAM software. You're only allowed to get certain accounts in there. So if I'm a database administrator, I might be able to only go to the database administrator section of the library and check out accounts from there. So what does that get you? It actually gets you some really powerful stuff. For one, it enables account sharing. And so this has kind of happened since the dawn of time, where you have a few like root accounts, and you got two guys on the team and they both happen to know the password to the root account. They just both use it happily. Not the most secure setup that you could ask for. The way that it works is you log into the PAM system, you go and you say, I want to check out this root account. And it gives you the password, or it connects you to that system. And you use that account in the context of that checked out credential. With that, it can track what you do, and it can audit what you do. And so it's not only tied to that account, but it's tied to the person who's checking out that account. So you can see who's doing what. It Also, in some cases, it can make the passwords become invisible to end users. If the PAM software can automatically connect you to a system through remote desktop or SSH, for example, they don't need to hand out the password to the user. They just connect you to it directly by plugging in the password under the covers, and so the user doesn't even see the password. Also, password rotation. So, you know, you can set up in a PAM to say, I want to change my root passwords every 6 hours, right? And it goes and it does that automatically, and it keeps track of them. And that way, if a credential gets leaked out, that it's not going to be useful for very long. And because it's generating its own passwords and people don't have to remember these things, it's kind of like a password vault. And it can make, you know, pretty secure passwords, you know, however long they need to be, whatever sort of randomness you need in them. So lots of good stuff with PAM. That's the gist. So I need some help here. I know you guys are getting punchy. Let's have a PG rated body part, please. Fingernail, okay. Adverb. Slowly. Plural noun. Identity right. Identity rights? Oh, the identirati. Ah, okay, yes. I like it. Oh, right. I'm obviously not a part of the identirati. There you go. I think maybe identirati. Okay. Oh my gosh. Close. We'll call it good. Adjective. Handsome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know why your brain went there, but I like that. Okay, so what problem are we facing? You know, you might be saying, Kelly, this looks like a dream world. IGA, PAM, these are amazing. Well, I'll tell you what the problem is. They don't work together very well. So traditionally, these softwares have been very siloed, and there's been little to no integration between the two. And that's a problem because most people that need one also need the other. If you need IGA software, you probably need PAM software. And likewise, if you have PAM software, you probably have a need for IGA. So you need both. They don't talk. That's a problem. IGA is really good at what it does, but it has a weak spot around privileged accounts, especially shared accounts. There's issues around account ownership, who owns these shared accounts, and also being able to request access to them that don't get solved well with IGA software traditionally. PAM, on the other hand, it solves those things great, but it has some severe limitations around governance. You can't, for instance, in most PAM software, do an access review to see who has access to these privileged accounts, which, you know, you might argue is one of the most important things to have governance around. So, big problem, and we will get to the solution in a moment, but first I need an emotion. Fear? Fear. That's how I felt before I came up here today. Nobody would provide words. Okay, a plural noun that starts with M. Monkeys. That's actually the one that I used when I was testing this out. That's great. All right, a food or a drink? Coffee, of course. Coming from this crowd, I should have guessed coffee or beer, right? All right, so now it's time for the solution, and this is where everybody oohs and ahs, usually when I give this talk. So, actually, this is the first time I'm giving this talk, so we'll see what happens. The solution is SCIM, which is near and dear to my heart because I've been working on the spec for 5 or 6 years now. What is SCIM? It stands for the System for Cross-Domain Identity Management. And that's a lot of words to describe something pretty simple. It's I don't know what that was. It's basically REST for identity management. Identity management, you're dealing with users and groups. There was no standard way to deal with these over the network. And so we developed a protocol and a language for this, and we called it SCIM. So how does this play in with the PAM world? Very, very nicely, in fact. So with SCIM 2.0, what you get is a REST protocol, and you get representations for users and groups. It's good. It's good for basic identity management stuff. What's been happening is that over the past 6 months, we've been developing a SCIM extension that does PAM management, privileged account management. And it actually works really well because SCIM 2.0 was created with extensibility in mind, so it's easy to kind of layer this stuff on top. And so the new stuff that we've added are privileged data. This is the privileged accounts that are being managed, or like the books in the library, right? Also, a very generic term, containers. So the containers are like the sections of the library. You might have a database administrator's container, and you might have a financial analyst container, but these hold groups of privileged accounts so that if I can get it into a container, I can use any of the accounts within that container. And finally, the access control on top of those. So for a container or a privileged account, which users and which groups have access to those. And so those are all the unique pieces to this PAM extension that's being built. And like I said, it's been happening over the last 6 months. A number of parties have been involved with this, mostly from the PAM world. If you know anything about PAM, then these names will look familiar to you. These are kind of the leaders in the PAM industry: CyberArk, Beyond Trust, Thycotic, Lieberman, Osirium. There's actually another one that I don't have I guess, the legal backing to be able to add to the slide just yet, but we've got others as well that are working with us. And so they're all representing the PAM side. SailPoint has been coming at it from the IGA side to build this spec. And what we're coming up with is a draft that we're going to submit to the Internet Engineering Task Force, the IETF, the same governing body under which the original SCIM specs were submitted, to make it an industry standard. So, you know, what do we gain from this work? There is going to be an industry standard here. I mean, if you look at the last slide, that is like the key players in the PAM world, and having that sort of amount of mass going towards this, I think the rest are going to follow very shortly. Having a standardized API is, you know, all of you in the room know this is better than the proprietary stuff, because you can just take two systems and sort of plug them together. And in theory, they should work. Sometimes a little rougher in practice, but in theory, they should work. A great part is that if you have an IGA system and a PAM system, and let's say that you acquire a new business unit and they have a different PAM system, you don't have to upgrade your IGA software to talk to this new PAM system if it supports the standard, because you already are talking that kind of that one language that they all understand. So it's great. And sort of the best piece of it is that the problems that we were talking about before, those kind of weak spots between the two technologies, they can work together now instead of being siloed. So you get governance for the PAM stuff, you get better access requests for the privileged accounts within an IGA system, and everybody's happier. All right, some final words. I need another place. What was that one? The White House. Nice. I did see Trump Tower on the architecture cruise. That was pretty impressive. Occupation. What is that? Movie critic. That's good. We are in the town of Siskel and Ebert, so that's perfect. Positive characteristic. Enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. Didn't think about having to be able to spell up here. Found my Achilles heel, people. All right, and plural noun. Sheep. I love going with the animals. It always turns out real fun. All right. Okay, so, oh, I'm sorry. This is being cut off a little bit. So this is not bug-free Mad Lib yet. I'll have to work on that a little bit. Okay, so when IGA meets PAM, do you believe in hungoverness at first sight? Well, neither did Iggy or Pam, at least not until that strong day 6 months ago. You see, both Iggy and Pam grew up believing that a person can be fearful in life with any number of the billions of computers on this earth. Iggy and Pam both shared the same profession, and as luck would have it, they both attended the conference for the Society of Coroners in Favor of Monkeys, AKA SCIM. In fact, on Thursday, the last day of the conference, they happened to sit next to each other in the session. Oh, this is perfect. Wow, I could never have anticipated this would work out so perfectly. Dinerati are from bars, sheep are from the White House. Presented by the brilliant movie critic, Professor Grizzle. In this session, Pam learned that even though she was very enthusiastic, that she often lacked transparency. Iggy learned that his most sensitive part, his handsome fingernail, deserved the same level of attention and protection as the rest of himself. Through these epiphanies, Iggy and Pam both realized that they needed each other. Iggy asked Pam if she would like to join him that evening for coffee. She said yes, and the rest is history, and they lived slowly ever after. Thanks to SCIM and Professor Grizzle. Ta-da! Okay. Thank you. You guys made that perfect. I'm so glad that bars and Idinerati ended up in the same sentence. That could not have been better. So here's some slides. On this slide, we have more info if you're more interested. Basic SCIM info, go to that first link. If you want to see kind of the REST API that's being proposed for the PAM extension, go to that second one. It's in early phase right now, but it's going to be turned in the next couple weeks into a draft that's going to be submitted to the IETF. So it's we're in the early stages there. And that's it. Time for questions? I didn't look at the time. Oh, good.
So knowing how SailPoint aggregates users and groups, how does that work from an access request standpoint when it's pulling in? Could you kind of walk us through how that would look, I guess?
Sure. So the way this would work is that the IGA software or SailPoint would have a connector that's able to connect to the PAM system. And in fact, since it's built on top of SCIM 2.0, if the software already has a SCIM 2.0 connector, there may be no code changes required. That was the case for me as I was implementing this in our product. And so it's a connector that goes out. It does reads from this PAM API that the PAM vendor supports. You can read the users, the groups, the accounts. We have sort of another thing in our product, and different products may work differently, but we have one called a collector that goes and gathers kind of the ACL information and puts it on there. And then it's a writable protocol as well. So if you want to, say, add a new user to a container, you can do a post that says, Kelly needs to have access to this container that has whatever in it. Does that answer your question?
Just as a follow-up, so
Yeah.
would that, I'm just speaking, I guess, from a SailPoint for what I know.
Sure.
Would that be like an entitlement that you would set up those containers?
Yes, they end up in the entitlement catalog, the containers do.
All right, thanks.
Probably time for one more question, if anybody has one. Guess that's it. Thanks very much, Kelly.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Y'all did good. Thank you very much.